who is this new demographic? Who is this demographic of early adopters in Web3 who own these NFTs, who's using a totally different currency to transact and buy things, and there's so much wealth. That's a huge opportunity for other brands who are looking to go and find that new demographic and connect with them in a way where they have to understand that behavior.
Hey everyone, GM, and welcome to Fuel for Thought, where we explore the multifaceted world of Web3 through the lenses of different industries and thought leaders. My name is Chris, and today we have a very interesting guest with us. That is Quinn Button. How are you today, Quinn?
Hi, Chris. I'm great. Thanks so much for having me here.
I'm super happy to have you. So guys, Quinn is an early crypto investor. She's been in crypto since 2016, if I remember well. Mm-hmm. She has been VP of Growth at NFT NYC. She is currently VP of Operations at Rug Radio. And that's going to be really interesting for our conversation. She has a Ph.D. in Consumer Behaviour. So what we're going to talk about in this episode, it's different topics, but the overarching umbrella is really going to be about consumer behavior, because I think there's a lot of things we can discuss here. So we're going to talk about the current consumer profiles in Web3 and the evolution of these consumer behaviors that Quinn has been observing and that we can see in the Web3 space. Then we're going to talk about how data from the blockchain can boost consumer insights and the overall impact of marketing strategies. And then we're going to talk about, here and there about Quinn's experience in Web3, give concrete examples, and just have a really nice chat as well. So, is there anything you want to say before we start, Quinn?
Well, no, thanks again for being here. I couldn't be more excited about this. This is, I don't often get to have an hour-long conversation about consumer behavior and data, but the nerd in me is so excited about this because I think it's the thing that gets me really excited about, the future of emerging tech and really how we understand ourselves and how we build new tech around understanding consumer behavior as well. So just really excited about that. I mean, thanks for the great intro too, Chris. I was going to say, I think, you summed it up pretty well for me in terms of my background. I think, in 2019, I got my Ph.D. in consumer behavior at Oklahoma State University. I'm originally from California, Northern California. So, my family was in the Silicon Valley area, when I was a little kid. And really for me, technology's always been the thing that I've been the most fascinated by, and specifically how it actually impacts the world around us and how others behave all around the world. And so I got my doctorate in 2019. When I finished the dissertation, I didn't really want to go into academia. As you said, I was an early investor into cryptocurrency. I mean, it's not that early, but it's 2016. So it was kind of back in the day. And the thing that I was mostly interested in was the technology, the underlying blockchain, the infrastructure, and how that actually works as a decentralized ledger technology, right? Also, and so when I got done with the dissertation, I looked at what else is being built on here, except for currency. That's when I discovered smart contracts and NFTs, and it opened up a whole world for me. And I was so excited to see that, art was kind of one of the things that people were kind of gravitating to help them understand this medium called it a non-fungible token, right? And I just was completely captivated, started collecting. I love art in general, just on my own, I have always loved art and collectibles as well. So just started really diving into the various discords and really understanding the community. And that was really what opened my eyes. I started really doing some interesting, more qualitative and quantitative, personal research of who are these people that I share a same interest with, who are these early adopters. And I remember going on Etherscan and trying to figure out who else owns the same things as me, and then reaching out to them on Twitter or Discord to say, hey, we obviously have a similar interest. But that behavior on chain is a very interesting thing, and I'm excited to kind of dive deeper into that with you, and what that means today and what that might mean in the future. But yeah, then I joined NFT NYC in 2021 and grew it into what the largest NFT it wasn't me, it was a whole team. We together grew it to the largest NFT conference, about 16,000 ticketed attendees in 2022 in New York, which was amazing. And I was also working as a VP of growth for their tech company called NFT Cred, where I got the opportunity to actually work with lots of enterprise level companies on understanding how they might use the infrastructure of blockchain and decentralized ledger technology long term in the future. So I worked with Coach, worked with PwC, SAP, really on understanding their tech stack and how they can use this. And that's really started opening my eyes to understanding this is a really interesting way for people to engage directly with their audience, definitely from an artist perspective, a creator perspective, and also a brand's perspective in terms of evolving beyond just the typical social media you pay to play now and what else is everyone doing? They're spending their money on Google ads and Facebook ads and all that stuff. Is there a more meaningful way to actually build a community, foster a relationship that's strengthened through ownership? And data was always the missing link for me in terms of understanding how marketing strategy should be put together, and also analyzing the effects, basically how did it actually perform this campaign or whatever it is that these brands were doing with non-fungible tokens. So it's really interesting. We'll dive into all the different various industries because it's not just, it spans widely and everyone's using blockchain technology. I like to stay focused on blockchain, not, we have NFTs and crypto and all that stuff, but the blockchain is really like the underlying structure that is the most fascinating. So how these companies are using it, how they're going to be using data to inform their decisions in the future. And yeah, I've been working, I left NFT NYC earlier this year in February. Love those guys. I still keep very close in touch with them. But for me, I wanted to dive a little bit more into data. So I'm an advisor. I was an advisor for a data company, for a couple of other tech stack companies, wallets and stuff like that. And then I joined Rug Radio recently, just really recently in August as their VP of operations, and it's been a joy. So I'll pause there because I know there's a lot to unpack there, but really I couldn't be more thrilled to really dive into consumer behavior from an academic perspective. What is the research like? Where is it at right now? And maybe where is that going into the future?
Awesome. Thank you so much for expanding on my intro. I mean, there's so many interesting details that we can layer here. So thank you for going deeper into this. And I see you have a really nice, talking about art before, you mentioned art as a really interesting thing for you. I see you have a squiggle on your chest there. Nice.
I love the squiggle. Yeah. I love the squiggle. It's one of my favorite. And I love Eric Snowfro. He's brilliant. I just love the math perspective, the algorithms, the generative art aspect. I love everything about it. And then, the simplicity of the squiggle. I mean, how can you not like the simplicity of it? And yeah, it's one of my favorite pieces for sure.
Yeah, it's genius. And it's also a piece of history, like the squiggle. I think it's not financial advice, but I think it's going to be here for a long, long time and have a lot of relevance for the years to come. So maybe one day I'll own one. But
one day you will, Chris. We're going to manifest it.
yeah, please. So going into consumer behavior now, I think what would be interesting as a first, layer of understanding for everyone, that you help us understand what is meant really by consumer behavior. Like when you analyze consumer behavior, you try to understand consumer patterns. What is it actually that you're looking at?
It's a great question. I love that. That's the best way where to start. How do we define consumer behavior? And I'm not going to give you like a definition from a theory, from an actual academic paper, but I think just super simply, it's human behavior, trying to understand human behavior in the context of obviously consumption and purchase behavior, right? And so consumer behavior as it relates to companies, to brands, what you buy, why you buy it, and what your interests really are. And I think that if we really drill down into what is consumer behavior, it's why do you purchase what you purchase, right? What that magical variable, which is definitely a huge part of this on-chain, data that we're seeing on the Ethereum blockchain and others as well. Owning a piece of something, or owning, a t-shirt, owning a water bottle, owning a hat from a company informs that you probably are interested, but you're interested in that brand, or it serves a utility function, right? And so there's various different reasons why people consume what they consume. So it's multifaceted. My research really dove into understanding the design of things. I used eye tracking technology in my dissertation and in a lot of my research to really try to understand how people are looking at a design of a product, of a website, of a car. It was actually, I'm a huge car girl, so I was looking at various different models of vehicles, specifically trying to understand, electric car design and how you can actually or really convince someone who's maybe not so inclined to want to drive an electric car. How do you design one that actually makes it look like something they would want to drive? So with this eye tracking technology, I was really looking at the patterns of the eyes, of where are you looking, to kind of understand what it is, which is very quick, right? And then how are you actually looking, what are you looking at, and for how long, to really understand whether you like it or not. And so it was a combination of eye tracking, understanding the patterns and the various different fixations. So if they fixated on a specific area, is there a specific pattern that on average people usually look at? And then following that up with a survey of what was your favorite one. So combining like what they're authentic, just looking at it, and then understanding which ones they preferred or which ones they didn't prefer. So that was really fun and interesting. And I think that's really based on categorization theory. How do we understand something? And then also this other theory called information entropy. And that's really, how do we make something simple but novel, like towing the line in design of making it not too complex so that we're frustrated and we don't want to look at it, but just novel enough so that it's interesting, right? And so how do we make that? And I think that's something we're working on in this builders market within Web3 on technology of the user experience. And I would say that's probably in some consumer behavior, like understanding the customer journey, the user experience, and how that informs exactly what they purchase.
Mm-mm. So in consumer behavior, we have the word consumer. How do you perceive consumers in Web3 today? Like, what is a Web3 consumer? Is there a peculiar segment that is a Web3 consumer as versus a Web2 someone from the mainstream that would buy an NFT, for example? And then, like, how do you view all this? Do you have a segmentation that you could share, from experience and analysis on your end?
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a great question. I would say how we define Web3 consumers. In the broadest sense, we kind of take it back to the basics of marketing of like at what stage do people adopt new items, right? So an automobile company has to come out with new models just to keep things interesting. And at what stage, who's the demographic of what we call the early adopters? And I would categorize Web3 consumers as early adopters. These are the ones who are okay with kind of the frustration and the clunkiness of maybe the first iteration, but love the idea of being the first to really try something new out that might like be world changing. So I like to always use the example of the iPhone, the very first iPhone. Like I would say Web3 consumers probably, if they were old enough, would have bought the very first iPhone when it came out, right? And so there are a lot of different characteristics that are in line that are pretty common in research with what an early adopter might do, right? Now, it's obviously not completely, we're a complex species, so it's not completely in line, but on average, there are certain characteristics where we're a bit more willing to take a risk on something. We're not expecting it to be perfect, but we are very inquisitive, we are curious, and we really kind of want to push the edge a little bit further. Now, that's probably the smallest of all of the different personas in a consumer typography, right? And so you have obviously you have early adopters, and you've got mainstream users, and then you've got the laggards, just to kind of keep it super simple. And the laggards are the ones who okay, grandma's finally on Facebook now, or mom and dad are on Facebook now. But the early adopters, well, it was kind of token gated, so to say, back in the day, where you could only get on Facebook if you were in college, if you had college, university email. So those were the early adopters, and then it opened up, and then it was probably the young people who just wanted to connect, where all of the college students were, and then the laggards were probably, our parents. And those are what's interesting though is that how do you get that? What I was really looking at in my research is how do you get, and we're focusing on this in the builders market of Web3 right now, how do you get the transition to happen from early adopters to mainstream adoption, right? To those mainstream users. And I think a lot happens in between that. It sometimes takes a bit longer for it to happen. but it requires very easy access for someone to say, okay, this is actually going to make my life better or easier, or it's something seamless. Like I remember watching old videos of, like the Today Show saying, what is this email thing? Email wasn't ubiquitously used until all of a sudden it was. And we don't need to understand how email actually works behind the scenes. Like we talk a lot about blockchain and the infrastructure, the back end of it. But eventually that mainstream adoption will happen when people are using it and it's actually solving problems and honestly creating a better user experience long term, without the friction of what we're kind of going through right now as early adopters. We want to make it super easy for people to actually start using and buying and collecting and trading.
Mm-mm. The frictionlessness of the tech, the infrastructure, and how we onboard people in Web3, that's like a major pain point. And you're totally right on that. We see all the, let's say, companies that are oriented towards Web2 or having a segment in Web2 that are really trying to, hack that issue. When you look at Doodles, for example, that's why they went on Flow. They wanted to have a easier onboarding, seamless onboarding for mainstream users that are not used to the whole hassle of buying crypto and then sending it to MetaMask and then paying gas fees. And I understand that. However, when you look at the early adopters that are currently, constituting the segment that is currently active in the space, well,
Right.
these guys are mostly interested in the infrastructure because that's what led them here in the first place, the tech, what it means for the future. And so I remember when Doodles made that move, well, there was a lot of backlash at Doodles because they were sort of like, in the eyes of some people, overlooking what makes blockchain important. And so that was a really interesting thing to witness. But as we move forward and the industry matures and we find more use cases that can really solve problems in society in general, we're going to need those seamless onboarding processes. I have a question for you in terms of what do you think will Trojan horse Web3 into the mainstream, especially if we think about NFTs today? Do you think it's the problems that NFTs will solve, or do you think that a big chunk of people will be onboarded in the first place because of the culture that is currently being born in Web3? We were talking about art and community before. Do you think that is what will drive people first to Web3, or will it be just because we're solving actual problems?
Oh, that's such a good question, Chris. I think it's kind of twofold. It could, I'm not in the prediction game, but I will say I absolutely love the culture that is here. I think that it is new. It is interesting. The creators are some of the most passionate people I've ever met. That includes you and a lot of the creators that I've just met along the way in the last, 2.5, 3 years. The artists as well are using this technology and understand how they're using this technology to create a legacy, establish provenance, various different things. And the auction houses have adapted to that too. And you're seeing it, really NFTs being, I think it is kind of this underground culture. We've seen lots of cultural moments and movements happen definitely in various different decades. And I think this is one where, I think that in the zeitgeist, it hasn't been quite understood of what it means to actually own something digital, like true digital ownership, right? Most people are on Instagram or whatever, and they post their photos and they think that profile is theirs, and it's actually not. That's not your IP, right? And so it's going to take a bit of time for people to truly understand what it means to own a piece of the internet, right? There's a digital piece that you actually can provably say this is mine, and then if you don't want it anymore, you have the option to actually give it or trade it or sell it to someone else. So I think that the culture, though, is really a huge part of it right now, and we're seeing this kind of play out in various different ways. We're seeing, like Luca and Pudgy Penguin's team has just come out, out in Walmart with a physical thing that people can actually like love and hold and cuddle with in their bed, and also have access to this amazing game that is completely blockchain enabled, right? And so that's really interesting. It's like that is a really great way to bring people from the physical mainstream into what's going on here. Now, I think when I think about art, I know I've had lots of conversations with people, right? Ethereum might be, the blockchain that most artists and collectors in the future would prefer to have like one-of-ones and really important like squiggle pieces, historical things that are valuable, but not everyone's going to buy those. Just like not everyone buys traditional art at Sotheby's or Christie's, right? So what is the Trojan horse, to answer your question? I do think that it's going to be probably at an enterprise level where people are using it and not knowing it. And I think that it's probably going to come in the form of something similar to what Adidas has done in terms of integrating like a token gated experience on their mobile app, where you have the first access to actually seeing the new arrival items, or you have first access, or you have exclusive access to, a very small set of, desirable shoes or whatever it is that they want to do. I know this is a really big thing in the sneaker world, so that's interesting. But I think that in general, it will come in the format probably in terms of rewards, like a rewards program, a ticketing solution of some sort as well, or I don't know. I think that it's also going to be like used for various different verification systems over time, like where it will just be something that you use to check into certain things. Maybe it's not just ticketing, maybe it's access into a lounge, maybe it's access into all of these things, but you actually have the ability to prove that you own it, and it comes with a lot of different other verification things to allow you access into various different experiences.
Your answer was interesting because it touched on the whole multifaceted aspects of Web3 today. You have the art segment, which is, I mean, if people are going to go get on board and onto the art segment that is being born from Web3, and I think it's going to become a major art movement, even in the traditional art world as it grows in relevance, these guys will be totally in for the culture that's here, right? Yeah. But then when you think of PFPs, you mentioned Pudgy Penguins before, the whole PFP side of things, then will people rather on board for the culture that is happening there? I don't know. I'm really enjoying it myself at the moment, but I know that outside of the circle we're in, people are maybe not understanding it as we do. So it's maybe not like an actual sales point, this whole culture thing. So maybe they will be onboarded by what it allows them to do. For example, Artifact allowing their holders to get access to unique sneakers that they're producing with Nike. And then you have this whole brand segmentation, brand orientation, where you have actual mainstream legacy brands that are onboarding Web3 in order to take their CRM programs and whatever it is they do to the next level. And so it's really interesting to look at those different angles and understand who are the consumers of each of those segments. And I assume that one way to do that is really dig into the on-chain data, the data that is provided by the blockchain, and not just like what we would do in the traditional data space in big data. How do you read this? Like, are you most excited about what the capabilities of blockchain native data allows to trace, or like how do you approach this?
100%. Yeah, I do think. Well, I think that the data on chain, for the most part, everything's anonymous, right? So I'm looking at a wallet, a sequence of numbers on the blockchain, and I'm looking at a smart contract. So if I'm looking at Doodle's smart contract on chain, like I can then see all of the wallets that actually own a piece who have interacted with this smart contract, right? And what you can do is you can dive a bit deeper into that and understand, on average, all of the wallets in this smart contract, what else do they own on average? Like, so what are the cross communities? And I think your point about bringing people into the culture is a really good one too. I think that that's right. There's something very special, I will say, about how community has been built within Web3. And I know that it's much different. It's changed a lot since 2020, 2021, 2022. But there's something very special in terms of who's still here and who's very passionate and how they feel attached, like their PFP is a part of their identity, and their identity means that they're part of this community. And I think when we start looking at it in that way, okay, so maybe say, Chris, I'll just make this up. You own a Doodle, you own a Pudgy Penguin, and you own a Cool Cats. Like, okay, wow, that's really interesting. What else do you own that might relate to those various different things. Maybe do you own a VFriend, and on average, who else within those smart contracts, looking in their wallet that we can do, like we can do this right now, what else like are the cross interests? And then we can kind of segment that out even further, especially when we start correlating off-chain and on-chain data in terms of what are the overall interests, right? I think about Lacoste does a really fantastic job. They've been in the NFT space for a while. Lacoste, I know Mercedes is in it, Porsche is in it. Like if you own a Lacoste, a Porsche, a Mercedes NFT, and maybe an Australian Open art ball NFT, what does that maybe inform me as to who you are? But I don't know who you are actually yet, right? But what I think is the most meaningful thing about this is kind of going back to what we said earlier. The most important variable in consumer behavior is ownership. Is like you've purchased something. You haven't just gone in and you're not just like not following just a page. You're not just watching a video. You have actually gone a step further, which is the ultimate, is that you actually have preferred to purchase. You have actually spent your money on this, and why. And so that to me is the most interesting variable that we can actually see for the first time in this decentralized, transparent database without violating anyone's privacy, but we can really understand who is this new demographic, who is this demographic of early adopters in Web3 who own these NFTs, who also, by the way, I think one of the things that is not talked about enough is the thing that I get reminded about every day when I look at this data is, holy moly, there's a whole generation who's using a totally different currency to transact and buy things. And there's so much wealth in this new generation of using a totally different currency that they can't use to go down the street and have dinner with. They can't use it most of the time in daily life. That's a huge opportunity for other brands who are looking to go and find that new demographic and connect with them in a way where they have to understand that behavior. We've seen brands kind of come in here. We've seen celebrities come in here and totally flop because they just don't understand it. It's like, I don't really get it. I don't get the culture, right? I don't understand exactly what they want. And I think that this is the next evolution of, in like what we're all working on right now is really trying to understand at the core, what is this culture really all about? Like, what are the things that people really want, really need? And you can see how much liquid ETH is in someone's wallet, right? How much on average, how much total value does a community have? So how much total value does Pudgy Penguins actually have in terms of wallet liquid ETH? So that means, okay, on average, actually, maybe they have about 2 Ethereum. Well, that's a good thing to know to inform, like, what's the next thing that you want to offer them in terms of like how you should price that next thing, how much they're probably willing to pay in gas, like make sure that they can actually afford it, right? In a way that like you can really dig down into a lot of things based on, are you looking for a go-to-market strategy? Are you looking for just kind of like what's the state of the union? Are you looking for different collaborations to happen with communities across various different, whether it's blockchains or on the same chain or different artists? I remember doing a study for a specific brand they were wanting to know like what artists are my community actually interested in? Like what do they own in terms of the art? And we were able to actually kind of find that for them, basically give them like 3 or 4. And it was surprising. They would never have actually known that was something. So then they reached out to them and there is an instant collaboration. And that gets me excited because I think for the first time in a long time, the script has been flipped for brands who are looking to partner with artists in the space who understand the culture and have their own voice. And they're going after them as opposed to the artists trying to get to the brands. So the way I look at on-chain data is there's so many different opportunities. I usually go into it like, what exactly are you looking for? There's an understanding of, this is definitely a demographic you want to try to tap into and reach because not a lot of companies are. So you're very early to do so if you can do it right. It's also a way to expand your like a new revenue stream, expand into different collaborations that maybe would never happen in Web 2, but you are willing to do it in Web 3 because you're informed by the data that you're seeing of like what the interests are of these early adopters who own your NFT, your collectible. And then it's also empowering where we can actually identify micro influencers. What's the impact of someone who is very loved and very committed to a specific community and maybe doesn't have a huge amount of following, but is actually way more impactful in terms of when they just make a tweet or they put out something like an article or something that they actually we can we can measure how many on-chain transactions within the network they specifically elicited. So that measurement of impact is significant, and it's not taken into the calculation of media campaigns and influencer marketing quite yet. But I think that that's going to probably change in the not so distant future.
Yeah, so there's so many interesting things that I want to touch on, but I think the first one that we can touch on is how do you concretely make sense of that data and make it actionable for brands? Because, for example, you were mentioning before that some brands are looking to enter the space and become relevant among the Web3 crowd. So that's one segment among the Web3 crowd by sort of collaborating, piggybacking on the existing credibility and audience of an artist and enter the space organically through that. And I think that's an amazing way to enter Web3. Mercedes is an interesting example because they did that. They collaborated with an artist and as well as a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization for those of you who don't know the term. And so they really went the organic way into how they approach Web3. So that was part one of what they did. And then part two, they launched, I think it was 3 days ago, they launched another type of NFT, which was collectibles. So they did not partner with an artist for that one. They just designed collectibles with their teams and rolled it out. And it didn't work properly as planned. They sold, right now, I think is 180 pieces out of 2,700 that were planned. And they were planning to replicate that type of sale, so 2,700 supply across 7 drops. So that, already the first drop did not meet that expected supply to sell. So probably they're going to have to revise their roadmap. But my question here is, Quinn, how would you advise Mercedes if you were working on a type of drop like this? How would you advise them to take advantage of what is available on the blockchain to make sure that not only do they target the right people, but then they have the right levers of action in order to activate those people?
It's a great question. I love this so much because I actually love Mercedes. Like I said, I'm a big car girl, and Mercedes has probably the best provenance and history of any car company in the world. So I love it. And I actually really respect these automotive companies that have such history. They don't have to be going into this new technology, but they're doing it and they're trying. And I think that the biggest thing that I say is we have to be okay with everyone making mistakes. We all make mistakes, and we just have to learn to correct it. And I think, yes, to answer your question, data can help inform. We're not going to get it perfect every time, but we can do it it's like hedging your risk and in a new drop, right? And so I think a few things that I would say in terms of what we could do on chain with the data is, okay, let's look in your smart contracts. Let's understand the current holders of Mercedes, right? Let's understand who they are, what's their total value, and their, on average, what's the total value of your community? How much liquid ETH is there? How many different NFTs are there? What are the top 5 to 10 cross community other NFTs that they own within their wallet in addition to yours? That informs interest at first, and an understanding. It doesn't necessarily mean what you do with that data is up to you, right? You can say, okay, I'm going to go and collaborate, or it's more like, okay, what makes this community aligned with ours in an interesting way? And then what I would say is we're also starting to understand personas. So on average, who your community are they traders? Meaning, like, when they buy it, are they going to trade it within a month? Are they flippers? Meaning, are they going to buy it and then flip it right away? Are they holders? Meaning they're going to buy one and they're going to hold on to it for about a year, 6 months to a year or longer? Or are they believers where they're going to buy not just one, but 2 or more and actually hold on to them as well? And then we also have the other persona called like stack and sellers, which isn't as prominent anymore, where people buy a whole bunch of them and then sell them off over time. But I think those personas are really interesting to inform Mercedes in terms of like, okay, here's your current existing community of holders who own what you've already put out right now. what are they most likely going to do? Because we can actually see this person actually will probably trade it on average, or this person actually owns 5 of yours and they've held on to it and they haven't done anything with it. So understanding that. And then I think we can go for the price range, understanding of how much on average liquid ETH they have in there. Like, what's the price point? And really, if you look at the other collections that they also own, how many are there? Like, trying to inform. I remember in 2021, I was talking to a very large magazine company, and they were like, "Is there a formula for the perfect drop?" And I thought it was the most interesting question. I don't think we have a formula quite yet, but we might be getting there. It's different. It varies based on who your community is, who your consumers are, right? And so, does the top collection actually include art blocks? And if you dig deeper, is it actually like more 1 of 1s or 1 to 10? So maybe if more of your community who already holds an NFT of yours is buying more of these more rare pieces, would a collection of 2,700 actually make sense? So I think that we can inform on price, we can inform on supply, and we can also inform on activity. When was the last time anything happened in the wallet? Because sometimes people have lives and Web2 jobs and they can't keep up with it, right? And so how much activity, and that informs timing. Like, how do you actually, I really think that what it can inform is a go-to-market strategy before you drop. Don't do it. Like, try to understand exactly how this is all kind of taking shape and form, and then really implementing those various different principles. I mean, then for the go-to-market strategy, the other side is who's not in your community yet that should be. Who have you not captured yet? Who's very interested in Mercedes, who loves Mercedes to death, and how can you actually create an experience when you drop that's maybe not on OpenSea, that's maybe not this very Web3, like get a MetaMask, sign the message, pay the gas. If you're trying to get to those individuals who already own a Mercedes, then go to some live events and onboard them with that white glove service. Like, how can you actually, do it that way, or make it super easy for anyone to just put an email in, create a semi-custodial wallet, and boom, pay with a credit card, and they've got it, right? So we should look within the community, I think, first to inform how like the structure might be if you wanted to like tap into your recurring customers, right? But then you also need to look outside of it, and who have you not tapped into who absolutely would love this? I would start with like, who else is in Web3 who doesn't own your stuff but super into cars and probably owns a different automotive NFT related NFT, or has a bunch of tickets from Formula One, because those are now NFTs as well, a few of them. So like really understanding exactly who else you should be reaching out to. So start with people who are Web3 native, or like at least aware and are okay with that. And then ultimately, and this is where I really focus on with working with companies, and I still continue to consult with them too, is like, let's get it ready for mainstream adoption. How can we make this user experience for you to be able to capture your current customers who are not Web3? How can we get those people who love your brand, who are such brand loyalists, like ambassadors? Like, how can we get them into this ecosystem? Because they'll bring a really great dynamic, I think, infuse what's already amazing about the community and the culture in Web3. They'll bring in the passion of your brand if they are really brand loyal. So how can you actually reach out to them and bring them in?
On that Web2 front, so we talked about how do you better target and activate a Web3 audience if that's your target, but then if you're trying to also tap into the Web2, and when we think about all the onboarding process, like how would you go about this? Because it's not, if you're making a drop that is that has a utility for the Web3 crowd that is going to be really well received, how do you make it relevant for the Web2 crowd as well? It's so hard to really merge both segments together in one value proposition and one go-to-market approach that makes sense. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's important to help people understand what the benefits are if you own this, right? So if you're trying to merge the two, because you're absolutely right, Chris, I completely agree with you. It's really hard to merge kind of the two value propositions together of like what Web2 wants from Mercedes. They just want a car. They just love, they love the brand and the icon of it. How do you merge that with the values and the principles and the value prop of Web3 and why people are there and actually owning and participating in their various different NFT drops? I think that it's important to have very clear messaging and really understand. And this was the word of 2022, and I think we're all sick of it, is utility. But really, I like to say more like, what's the benefit of someone actually having this? Like, what can I do with it? You know, I remember at NFT NYC, I was going on G Money scavenger hunt, and one of the places that we went to was the Adidas store, and they were like, hey, if you show us the token on your phone, like you actually get a discount. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Like, okay, that's one benefit here. Okay, people. And then they would later on integrate within their app, and it's genius. It's brilliant. I think that MasterCard has done a really fantastic job of really easy onboarding. I think it starts, Chris, with the easy onboarding, in terms of just like, what's this experience going to be like? And then when you're ready to actually tell people about it, it's about really understanding the benefits, or what's the mission behind this? What am I supporting? How am I going to be a part of this brand's history, this lineage of what they're trying to do? If they're going out in these new frontiers with this emerging technology, I do want to be a part of it, and why. And they need to tell Web2 why they want them to be with them on this next evolution, this next journey. And I think it really comes down a lot to marketing and messaging. But from a technological standpoint, in terms of the value prop, I think it just has to be super seamless. Like the MasterCard onboarding experience for their music accelerator program, which then evolved into, like, you got a MasterCard NFT, I think it was on Polygon. And that allowed you access to various different things. And the most recent one that I experienced was AI. Like, you could actually go into their AI platform to create songs and then mint them on the Polygon blockchain. I thought that's pretty cool. Maybe that's not the value prop that everyone, wants, but I think it was super aligned with what they're doing is in terms of really supporting artists and creators and helping people understand the importance of musicians owning their own IP, right? So it's really understanding the mission. Like, why would my little sister, who has nothing to do with this world at all, but she thinks it's fascinating. She laughs at me. She doesn't really understand what I do. But how can I, if her favorite brand, like, what would make her be like, oh, this is interesting, I'll click this, and then boom, I'm into it. I think to go back to one of your other questions, like, what is the Trojan horse? I think gaming will probably have a lot to do with it, for sure. And I think Pudgy Penguins has hit that right on the nail. In terms of, okay, like, bring it in, you own this, and now you can actually access the game, so token gated items and whatnot too. So it's hard to merge the two, but it's difficult for a reason. And I think we're all experimenting. I like to go, I've written so many case studies on various different different campaigns. I don't call them drops, like campaigns that brands have done over time, right? In Web3. And not all the ones that I've worked on. I have written those as well, but also I love studying, like, what were the mechanics of it? What was the thinking behind it? What worked well, what didn't work well? Because I remember 2 years ago, gas fees were awful. Like, the gas wars were impossible. But now if we can eliminate that and the user experience continues to evolve better, what actually do people want to use with this NFT? Like, what can you give them, whether it's being a part of the brand in a closer, more meaningful way and bringing them into the community? Is it tied to various different exclusive experiences? Is it tied to exclusive product like Adidas has done? Is it a community that you can come into, or are there other benefits over time that they'll be very happy that they got this medium, this basically this digital badge, this digital thing? That's all that they really care about, that it gives them the ability to do X, Y, or Z.
You mentioned something earlier that it directly bridges to my next question. You mentioned earlier that the Web2 users that might be interested in Web3 products also might be interested in having a sort of, so I'll say the name, not everybody likes the name, but it's very evocative, phygital, right? So it's like
Yes.
people going into a store, authenticating with a QR code or whatever that links to their blockchain wallet, and having an in-store experience or something in the store that is going to be tied to the ownership of that digital asset, right? What is interesting behind that, if we circle back to the blockchain and the data, is through this type of new concept, new approaches, you're able to trace the behavior and the touch points and all a wide set of data of consumers going into different places, like in the physical world. If you think of B2B industry companies, for example, they might not have the same knowledge of their end consumers as B2C companies may have, because you have a whole network of distributors that you sell to, and then these guys sell to the end consumer,
Mhm.
and they don't necessarily share the data back to the original producer, right? So now with blockchain, this seems to me like a real paradigm shift in CRM and big data. You can totally own a relationship with your end consumer, although you're distributing to a wide network of business partners. How do you see this disrupting how companies and marketing teams operate in the future?
Oh, I love this question. I know I keep on saying that, but they're coming out with the best questions. This is something that I really get excited about, because I think it's not, again, it's not been something that I think people have really completely understood as to why this data, why this shift is so important. And I think a lot of people will start realizing it in the next year or two. Some enterprises very much are understanding it, and that's why they continue to build and invest into blockchain infrastructure. And I think what we're seeing, exactly like you eloquently just said, Chris, really what we're seeing is this blockchain. It's just a public ledger, right? It's a verifiable, immutable, transparent public, protecting everyone's privacy as well, anonymizing that. But really, it's a public, transparent ledger of transactions. And so what we can see, what we can actually inform, like what we can see for the first time ever is actually, I can actually see like the POS system of various different brands, of various different artists. Like what we see is like, okay, there's smart contracts, there's wallets. Like, yeah, it's really basically all of this has been completely gate kept by every, company internally, right? Like no one really gets to see who actually walked into the Lacoste store except for Lacoste, probably MasterCard, American Express, and all that stuff as well. But for the first time, we really can actually see, okay, who actually owns a piece of this brand and this brand and this brand. And that ownership is like, it's almost like an open POS system that marketers can tap into, and they can actually trace like exactly the customer journey of what if they did this, if they bought this, this toy at Walmart, and then they scanned in and we get looking at their wallet and they're now in the game. And then what did that inform them? And they actually went on to go buy this or that. And we can actually see that. And from a CRM perspective, that gets me really excited. In last year, I spoke at the HubSpot Inbound conference, actually just before Barack Obama, which was like the most insane thing ever. It was a bunch of marketers, though. HubSpot's a fantastic CRM. And they really, what the talk was about was how do you directly engage with your audience in a way where you can actually understand who they are in your CRM, remarket to them, and continue to like actually improve your direct engagement with them. Like exactly what you were saying before. To me, it's now a streamlined understanding, direct one-to-one relationship that makes me feel a little bit like, better understood by them. That makes me feel like they, there's endless potential, right? Like, I mean, most consumers probably don't think of it in that way, but I think from a marketer's perspective, it's a really compelling, interesting, new way of being able to understand exactly what people's interests are, not just by Facebook pages that they like or Instagram or cookies or anything like that. It's the most important thing. They actually owned and transacted and traded, and we can actually understand all of the different touch points of one customer, and actually then on a scale, and not just your own customer base, but other customer bases as well. And it's very interesting.
What's interesting also with the blockchain is, and you touched upon that right now, is the blockchain puts the focus back to the actual consumer behavior and not the consumer profile. I don't know if that's the right word, but that's how I would describe
Absolutely.
it, because you have in traditional marketing, you would say, okay, well, my target is 20 to 30 years old and they're based in the US. Well, you might not have that data from the blockchain. You might link the data from the blockchain to your e-commerce data, for example, and then you may be able to trace back who that wallet owner, who is anonymous on the blockchain, is, and actually what his age is and what his country is. But the blockchain allows to really focus on, okay, what is this consumer, whom the name, the location we don't know yet, what is he or she interested in, and how does he consume the products that we sell him to or that our competitors sell to him or her. That is really interesting. And I was reading a report the other day, which is called Reaching the Unreachables. And that
Mm-hmm.
report was talking about how consumer behavior is shifting from being like a fandom to community, especially within millennials and particularly within the Gen Z. I don't know if you've also seen that in your
Yeah.
research and in your experience, but we see it's like there's more granular and more granular segmentation of
Mhm.
groups of people and centers of interest into small tribes. And I see myself, I would assume that Discord will play a large role in
Mhm.
bringing those small tribes, communities together and really have, um, well, bring that sense of community for a brand. For example, opening a Discord, we saw Louis Vuitton opening one recently. You're
Mhm.
going to have that sense of community, but not only that, you're going to be able to qualitatively understand who your um, blockchain collectors, consumers are. And that is also really interesting to me. So the question I'm coming to is, what role do you see Discord playing in all of this?
It's a good question. Yeah, I think it's so funny because people are so, I think they're so hard on Discord. And maybe it's because, yes, maybe for a new person coming into Discord, especially if the Discord's very disorganized, like it seems like it's a lot. It's like, what am I getting myself into? For us, early adopters of Web3, we've been in Discord for so long. Like I have a bunch of them. I'm still in them, but I'm muted and I can't keep up. It's almost too much, like too much information at once that I can't keep up with. Right. But I think Discord will play a role, and I think that this is really it. Again, it kind of goes back to our topic about culture. Discord was a very fundamental part of the emergence of this culture, right? Discord was where people could be anonymous still, like you didn't have to share any social media or anything like that. It was just like, hey, I have access to this because I own this thing. If they token gated it, if not, then it's just like you found the link, you were interested in this, so that's why you're here. So it's basically condensing the community into like, okay, you found us, here we are. This is exactly where you need to be. And I think that Discord will continue to play a role. I think it's really about the design of the Discord in general. How do you make it not as noisy? How do you make it really actually useful where someone actually wants to go in to there? And it's really easy for me to like understand exactly what's going on. Or I feel like there are a couple of Discords that I actually don't have muted that I go into pretty much as much as I can. And one of them is the Admit One community Discord, right? I know my husband and I have been in the Admit One community since it started, and I've gotten to know these people over time. And I think that's what you really want. That's what Louis Vuitton's wanting is like, who are these people and how do we keep them here? And how do we get to know who they are? Like, yes, we understand what their wallets are. Yes, they own a piece of Louis Vuitton, but how do we get them to like really get along? Like, how do we build our own little culture within this microcosm, right? And how do we contribute and be a part of that? And how do we foster that? And how do we like, in a way, this could be like this group in the Discord at first to me was like, here's the beta testers of everything. This is the earliest adopters who are just interested, fascinated, passionate, looking for connection. How brands use Discord in the future, I think that it will probably involve gating experiences. I think that brands will also have to figure out how do you expand beyond Discord to actually make that intimate community come together. I think Discord is the go-to right now. I can see that in the next 5 years, something else evolving, or maybe Discord evolving, where it's something that it's like, I just have this on my phone and I'm in and I'm just chatting like a WhatsApp like group that's token gated, that's like created by a brand that you have access to and that you enjoy waking up and saying GM or whatever it is, that whatever the culture is in that community is. But I think it's a fascinating question, and I love what you said about it's going away from we're really understand, this is making us understand consumer behavior on the deepest level, and yes, it's a small sample size right now, but I think like marketing has leaned on, there's been so much violation of privacy. There's been like I talk about it all the time with my friends where I say something and I get an ad that I would never have clicked on, but it's because I know it recorded. There's violations of
This is
privacy. There's a
crazy. Like,
reason. Yeah.
how is this happening? Sometimes I
Yeah.
just like speak even in another room, and then my phone shows me something on Instagram that I was talking about 5 minutes before. Like,
Exactly.
how is this happening?
It's creepy and I feel violated, and I feel like there's a reason why, like there's something in Web 2 was not right, and something I felt, and maybe that's kind of the early adopter persona that we all have, that's like we're a bit rebellious, we're looking for a better solution, we're wanting to. And I think there was something and I still think that there's something not right with that, right? I think that that's really creepy, and there's violations with that. And I'm in Europe right now. Usually I'm in the United States. You guys have way better regulations on data privacy than we do, right? Like I have to click accept or deny cookies on every website. We don't have that in the United States. So, but I think what this space on-chain data, what it's going to do is it's going to force marketers to really be very diligent and targeted in what who they're reaching, why they're doing it, and the messaging. It's going back to the basics, but in a way that I think is more meaningful, where we want that connection. It's going away from just like, okay, like go ahead and make me a part of this group of personas that you like the AI will tell me I should probably buy this. No, I don't really want that. I also I want to actually feel like there's a genuine, authentic connection. That's the holy grail is brand loyalty, right? And so how do you actually get brand loyalty? Okay, maybe you got me because I was, impulsive and I purchased this, but like, I don't really want this. This is not where like you get brand loyalty by really forming a very strong community. And that's what Web3 at the most, like at its core really did, with all this different IP and all these different like pieces of art and various different membership programs. I think that's really where marketing is going. I think the data on chain can help inform that more authentic, that more genuine. I would say like marketing is just the word that we continue to use, but I think it's really about building relationships with the people you want to help build your brand for it to actually exist in the next 10 to 20 years. And that's what the opportunity I think is here. And that's what a lot of the data can be used to do if it's used right. And it's done with a team that's very thoughtful and really puts in, it takes time to build in Web3. That's the thing too. This takes time. Successful go-to-market campaigns take time, and it requires you to really understand qualitatively and quantitatively exactly who you're trying to target, what you're trying to build, what community you're trying to strengthen. And I think that's what gets me excited for the next, couple of years, is as people kind of start understanding that. I hope that branding and marketing get easier and better for consumers and creators overall.
It's also really exciting to me. I'm really I'm not looking forward so much like into the future, because I really enjoy being part of what's happening on a day-to-day basis and just like see what's happening. But I do look forward to the day where brands have a good understanding of how to leverage blockchain data. There's a good group of people there to actually have data to tap into from different angles. They have the structure internally to really like know how to, be able to leverage all that stuff and make it actionable into activations, physical, etc. And the infrastructure, be it accessibility to the data. You were mentioning Web3 Sense before, or how you bring people together leveraging blockchain technology, for example, token gated discords. Everything is more mature and comes together in a way that is going to unlock the next level of consumer engagement. Like, this is really exciting to me. And so as we come to an end on this podcast episode, I'd like to ask you a last question. Circling back to Web3, right, and consumer behavior in Web3, we're going to probably see more and more of the Web2 audience, the traditional mainstream audience, being onboarded into Web3 and joining the community that is so very small right now, and shape it in different ways, especially if things kick off and pick up again like they did in 2021. How do you see consumer segments and behavior evolve in that context?
I think that we will look, we're all a bit tribal in nature, right? And I think that right now we have an interesting world where AI and algorithms are trying to help us understand what we might want, what we might not want, and all that stuff. But then there's also like those segmentations of how brands use, or brands, IP, communities, like all of the people who are involved, artists, how do they understand? I think it gets down to who are the people who will become your biggest fans, your biggest ambassadors. How can you foster that kind of ecosystem where it's not so transactional? Like, yes, we're talking about transactions on chain and stuff like that, but I think customer segmentation is going to continue to get more and more and more refined. But I think that what we have the opportunity to do with the on-chain data is to understand our community um, in a more meaningful way, where it's not just about how much money they have. It's not just about, like the amazing like Beeple piece that they own or whatever. It's like, who are these people actually? Because I think that if you can really tap into understanding who, like, who are you trying to target to? Are you trying to target to people who love to collect art? Are you targeting people who love to go to Formula One? Are you trying to target, this is like very basic stuff. We are going to be able to understand not just are they interested, but they've purchased something from this. Like they're like beyond interested. That is they are actually they're in it. Now, what are you going to do with that? And I think that's what gets me excited in the next round, because a lot of people have left. I say this all the time. I think that like building right now I love this building time, this bear, because I feel like a lot of the hype and a lot of the FOMO and all that stuff, that's kind of gone to the wayside. I mean, it's still there, of course, but I like that we get to really focus on what are we actually doing? What are we actually building here that is going to last beyond the next cycle, right? What problems are we actually solving? We're not just talking about what's the floor price, how much money did this person make, like how much. Like we're really getting down to real problems that need to be solved with business and with blockchain. And if we can continue to do that and also pick up like the things that I think that are so special about what happened in the last 3 years. And this even happened before with crypto, but I think it happened even more because NFTs, PFPs, art, all that stuff allow people to become a bit more tribal than just crypto, like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Polygon, right? It was like, okay, it became about my identity and about my community. And what does my preference of a brand or whatever like that, what does that actually say about me? It says a lot. And do you want that to be forward facing, or do you want that to be a bit more private? That's really what we need to understand in terms of who's here and how do we like bring in the next wave of people to actually just be in it. I think before we do that, I hope that more and more companies and entrepreneurs and businesses who are in this space right now really take a hard look of how to actually build an authentic community a customer base in a way that I have never seen, like the power that some of these communities in Web3 actually have, the loyalty, the like unwavering loyalty that some of these communities actually have, no matter what, like up, down, all in between. There's something really special there. So capture that, understand who they are from a quantitative perspective, so that you can actually have keep giving them good benefits and making, you're not going to always make everyone happy, but like actually keep them engaged in a relevant conversation. But then also, how do you qualitatively understand? How do you say like, hey, Chris, like, how's your day going? Like, I don't know, I've never met you in real life, but you're my friend because you're a part of this community. And that's like, brands would love to do that, right? Like they don't necessarily do that in Web 2. It's too big. But like that micro ability to really foster a genuine, authentic, real community that is passionate about being there and wants to become a part of something bigger. And that brands are allowing them to be a part of that through whether it's ownership or IP, whatever it is. That I hope is what stays into the next cycle. And then really what we have to work on is technology abstraction, so that others can actually get into that community. The brand loyalists can be a part of it and start understanding the culture and this new way of being a part of a brand long term to actually, propel itself into the next decade or two.
That was a great wrap up. Thank you so much for that very insightful answer and the overall conversation. It was extremely interesting for me. I hope for you guys as well listening to us. So hit that notification bell or subscribe if you haven't, because there's a lot more coming on my channel. Fuel for Thought is here to stay, and I thank you so much, Quinn, for all those wonderful insights.
Chris, it's been an honor. Thank you so much. And I hope I come back again. I'll be tuning into the next episode. And again, thank you so much. It's people like you. I always say I came for the tech and I stayed for the people. And it's people like you that make me really happy that I'm here. So thanks very much.